In today's lesson, we're going to be discussing some of our new vocabulary words from our next set of flashcards: static characters and dynamic characters. And we'll also be talking about an analysis of Chapter 18 that you should have read already for today, Monday, October 26th. In literature, static characters are ones that do not undergo significant change. A static character is a literary character that remains basically unchanged throughout a work. Their character traits remain essentially stable throughout the course of the story. This is commonly done with secondary characters in order to let them serve as thematic or plot elements within the larger context of the story. Supporting characters and major characters other than the protagonist are generally static, though exceptions do occur. One way to think of remembering the definition of a static character is to think about a balloon and static electricity. If you were to rub a balloon on your head, it creates static. And then if you stick the balloon to the wall, like in the picture here, the balloon gets stuck. Think of a static character as getting stuck. And because they're stuck in one place, they can't really change or go anywhere. Here are some examples of static characters that we've met so far in Among the Hidden: Mother, Dad, Matthew, and Mark. These characters would be considered static because they haven't experienced any major changes. When you think about their character traits, Mother always tries to make the best of things. Dad is quick to get angry when things don't go his way. Matthew and Mark, Luke's brothers, are also not very developed characters. Usually when we see them in the story, they're teasing Luke when they talk to him, and neither of them are even around that much to begin with. On the other hand, we have dynamic characters. Dynamic characters are the ones who change significantly during the course of a story. Changes considered to qualify a character as dynamic include changes in how the character views or understands events, changes in that character's level of commitment towards different things, or changes in what the character values. Changes in circumstance, even physical circumstance, do not apply. So that would be like if a character got a new haircut, or a makeover, or moved from one place to another. Unless it results in some change within the character's inner self, physical change does not usually apply. The protagonist is nearly always a dynamic character. And remember, our protagonist is our main character in the story, the one who is the central character at the middle of the plot. You can think of dynamic characters kind of like a stick of dynamite. When a stick of dynamite explodes, well, it's no longer a stick of dynamite. You can't get it back again. Just like dynamic characters, they're completely different from the beginning of the book to the end because of that significant change in their own character traits. Let's think about whether or not Luke in Among the Hidden can be considered a dynamic character. In order to figure that out, we would have to consider his character traits. In the beginning of the book, Luke feels like he can talk to his mother about anything. Also in the beginning of the book, Luke follows the rules. Luke also accepts his life as a hidden third child. All throughout chapters 1 and 2, Luke has flashbacks and thinks to how he has lived his life so far. We would walk away from just chapters 1 and 2 feeling like Luke is honest and accepting of his situation. Although he is upset that he has to stay inside, as a reader we can tell that Luke understands the seriousness of being hidden. Luke starts to change though. Up to the point that we have now read, chapter 18 in the book, Luke has started to become more and more secretive. If we think back to chapters 3 and 4, when he decided to not tell his mother about seeing out of events, we started to change some of the character traits that we were addressing Luke with. We started to feel like Luke was capable of being a little bit more sneaky and secretive. Luke also shows us times when he broke the rules, like when he went into the kitchen, and when he plotted to go from his house to the sports family's house. These changes in his character are making us realize that Luke is probably dynamic. Furthermore, although Luke accepted his life as a hidden third child in the beginning of the book, Up to the point we've read now, we see Luke becoming increasingly frustrated by his life as a hidden third child, which is why he was willing to risk going to the sports family's house in the first place. All of these text evidence pieces are showing us as a reader that Luke is definitely a dynamic character. If we think about the rest of the book, although we haven't read it yet, we might predict that Luke could continue to keep more important secrets from his family, that Luke would likely continue to break more rules, and perhaps Luke will eventually try to change his life and try to stop hiding in some way. On this course of action, we realize that Luke will probably continue to change even more before the end of the book. Therefore, Luke is a dynamic character. If we were to write out that response and use R2D2, this is a sample of what it might look like if we had to answer the question, is Luke a dynamic character? So, is Luke a dynamic character? Yes, we know now that he is. But if we had to answer that question using our writing strategy R2D2, let's take a look at what it would sound like. Here's an exemplar answer using that strategy. Remind yourself that the R in R2D2 stands for respond to what the question is asking. The 2D stands for provide 2 details. And the last 2 stands for bringing your answer together with an inference. A respond to what the question is asking sentence starts off our response. Luke is a dynamic character because his character traits change during the book. Luke went from honest and accepting of his life to secretive and sneaky. So notice a couple of things here. In order to respond to what the question is asking, we had to say that Luke changed during the book. And then we also had to say how he changed. He went from, let's look at these character traits, honest and accepting of his life, to secretive and sneaky. By stating all of that, now we've fully responded to what the question is asking. Because remember, a dynamic character is a character that changes. Next, we have to provide 2 details. Remember, that can't just be 2 random details from the book. They need to be details that are fully explained and relate to exactly what the question is asking. As he becomes more frustrated with being a hidden third child, Luke begins to act in ways the reader might not expect based on his characterization in the beginning of the novel. For example, Luke starts spying on the neighborhood and decides not to tell his mother because she might try to stop him. Another example is when Luke makes the plan to sneak out of his house and go to the sports family's house to meet their hidden third child, Jen. Finally, we need to bring our answer together with an inference. And an inference is when we sort of take our answer that one step further and make a prediction or guess about something that's continuing to happen or might happen next. These examples show us the change. Again, we're going back to our original answer here, but taking it that one step further. The change in Luke's character, and the reader can predict that Luke will likely continue to experience change as the novel progresses. Now let's turn our attention to an overview of the important events that happened in Chapter 18, which you should have read before today's lesson. In Chapter 18, we see Luke talking to Jen about the rally. Luke seems terrified at the idea of going to Jen's rally. Jen shows Luke her chat room for hidden children and mentions that she has contact with about 800 other shadow children. Luke feels very nervous about going on the internet and the computer with Jen. He still thinks that the government might find him just by him being near Jen on the computer. Jen reassures him time and time again that the government's, quote, not that competent, unquote, in terms of actually being able to spy on everyone the way that they say that they can. Jen says she's been going on the internet and using the computer for many years and that they haven't caught her. And she reveals that her chat room is also password protected to further allow for safety and keeping people out who might tell on them that they're all shadow children. But then she tells Luke the password for the chat room, and the password is the word free. Now, today, to our standards, we probably wouldn't think that that's a very secure password. We'd probably want her to add in some numbers and characters to make the password a little bit more protected. But we do have to realize that the author of this book actually published the book back in the 1990s. So to her, she probably couldn't have predicted about how chat rooms and passwords would be in today's world, and then probably how much more secure they'll have to be in the real future. So just an interesting thing to think about as we read through chapter 18. Now, what about our new characters? We've met Jen now for several chapters, and we might be asking ourselves, will Jen end up being static, or will she end up being a dynamic character? And what about Jen's new chat room friends that we met in this chapter? Yolanda, Carlos, and Sean. Well, we don't know yet, but likely these will be secondary characters in the book and will remain static. Jen, for example, though, we're not sure yet. She could go either way. It depends how much the author continues to develop her character. Today, for your discussion post in your Among the Hidden Team's discussion post channel, I want you to consider whether or not you think Jen is ultimately more likely to be a dynamic character or a static character. Remember, a dynamic character is one who changes. A static character stays the same. Will her character traits continue to be exactly what we've seen in the past few chapters, or will she, like Luke, end up being more of a main character and change before the end of the book? Write your ideas on your discussion post on Teams. As always, if you don't have internet access, you can type your response and save it on a Word document so that you can copy, paste, and post it when you're back on the school's internet. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to reading your responses.